Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 207, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, January 5th, 2024. Hello. Happy New Year. I hope you had an amazing break, if you even had one. I know not everyone's lucky to get off from work, especially those who work retail and in the restaurant, businesses here in town and wherever you're listening from. But I hope you had a great holiday, and I really hope your new year is off to a good start so far. First, as I'm wont to do, I overestimated my free time and desire to record over the holidays. I thought for sure I'd get at least one episode done while I was in Connecticut visiting my family, but it did not happen. It just, sometimes they shake out that way. So I apologize for setting an expectation that, there would have been at least one show last week. But I hope you understand. Just having a great time with my family. So since I'm already talking about them, we'll just get right into that. Was home in Connecticut at my parents' house for about a week. Got to see my brother and sister-in-law and, their kids, my niece and nephew. And it was great. We had a really good holiday. Nothing, huge happened. Just nice to spend time with the family and be back in my hometown and my home state. And thankfully the weather wasn't, too cold. It wasn't nice out. It was a little wet and rainy up there for whatever reason. But thankfully it was not freezing cold as sometimes around this time of year it certainly can be. It was even colder during Thanksgiving this year when I was up there. So that was a welcome surprise that the weather wasn't too bad. Outside of that, the highlight of Christmas Day itself, of course, was seeing the kids open their presents and seeing them talk about what Santa brought them and whatever, their mom and dad or other relatives got them, all these toys and books and, fun stuff. It's always great seeing them just like jump from toy to toy to be like, oh, and then I got this, and then this does this. And, it's great. I mean, anyone who has kids or like me, a niece and nephew or whatever, if you've ever spent time around kids, which is all of us, I'm sure, around the holidays, you just know how excited they are, or maybe thinking back to your own childhood. It's a special time. So it was great to be able to be home again for Christmas and spend time with them. And in addition to, the typical Christmas type things, we also, went out to eat a couple times, went to a place called Shady Glen. For those who are unfamiliar, this is a place in Manchester, Connecticut, not too far from my hometown. They've been around, I think, since like the 50s or 60s. And they still, the waiters and waitresses and the folks cooking the food as well, they all still dress in these like not uniforms, but I'm using that term, but it's not like a uniform, like a police officer uniform or anything, but they've been wearing the same outfit, since that time. So it feels like a throwback when you go in there. The board where they have the food listed, it all kind of harkens back to, years past, and it's a nice little venue. And they're known for their cheeseburgers, because what they do is they, when the burger's cooking on the grill, they put four pieces of cheese on it, but they do it in a way that, they overlap on the burger, but then each like corner, there's a corner of each one that is sitting flat on the grill. So obviously the cheese that lays flat on the grill gets a little, like crunch to it. And so when they serve it to you, they call it sometimes you'll see people call it a crowned burger or a burger with a crown, because they kind of fold it up a little bit. So, you don't even see the bun, the bottom half of the bun. It just looks like top bun, burger with cheese on it, and then this like crown kind of, like a bowl almost of like this crunchy cheese. And people eat it different ways. You can kind of pull the crunchy part off and eat that itself. But most people kind of fold the crunchy part on top of the burger and then put the bun on there. It's this nice mix of crunchy and gooiness of the cheese, and it's really good. So that was exciting to go there. I hadn't been there in several years, so I was happy to get another taste of that delicious cheeseburger. And one evening we went to Mohegan Sun, which is one of two casinos that are in Connecticut. The other one is Foxwoods. I hadn't been there in years either. It's really nice. It's just an incredible venue on the inside. And, we didn't do too much gambling, but a little bit. Sadly, we didn't win anything. And the cool thing about it is there's so much to do and see there. It's not all about playing, whatever casino games. There's a kids area, there's shops, there's restaurants, there's an arena in there. They have different events throughout the year, and then they have a couple other like venues within the venue type thing where again they'll do concerts and other shows and things. So it was cool to be back there. I hadn't been there in several years, and just to see the space, have a little fun with the slot machines for a little bit despite not winning, and then inside one of the restaurants is Frank Pepe's, which is a New Haven style pizza place. This particular location hasn't been around that long, but the original one has been around for years and years, decades. We're talking in New Haven. And if you're not familiar, yes, there is a Connecticut style pizza, also known as New Haven style pizza. It's kind of like a Neapolitan style. You can go look it up for more details, but it's really tasty. So I just got like a regular, just cheese, nothing crazy this time around, and was happy to, again, just have another taste of something from my home state that, I like and reminds me of home. And so that was also a highlight. So other than that, we showed my niece and nephew the Back to the Future trilogy for the first time. We weren't too sure how they were going to feel about it. There was a couple grumbles about how, this seems kind of like a super old movie. It did come out in the early 80s, so, they're not wrong, early to mid 80s. Now, the first one came out, so they're not wrong. At this point, it is a fairly old film, but after the first one ended, they were already asking when can we watch the second one, and over the course of the week, we watched all three, so that was a lot of fun. I hadn't seen those, and I couldn't even tell you how long, so it was nice to revisit them as well, and, it was cool to see them get excited about it. So very fun trip home. Very happy. I got to sleep in pretty much every day, which was great. Work slowed down a little bit. Of course, that changed, earlier this week. I got back and was like, all right, back in the swing of things. Holidays over. Podcast, we'll do one. And no, I got so backed up like immediately. It seemed like everybody was holding on to emails and ideas, and like, it's too close to Christmas, we'll just send it on the first work day back. So on the 2nd of this month, it was just like I wasn't prepared for how much I was gonna have to do. I caught up eventually, but that's another reason for the delay in podcast. So happy to be back. Hope your holiday was just as good as mine. We've got a couple of stories to talk about today. One is pretty wacky, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And the other one is about we have a prominent visitor coming here on Monday. So without any more delay, let's get into it. Well, with the new year, yes, it is an election year. The primaries are coming up this month. Recording this episode on Thursday, January 4th. That was actually the last day to register for the Democratic primary, which is going to be for the first time ever, first to be held here in South Carolina. Used to be like first in the South. Now it is just first in the country. They moved up ahead of New Hampshire and Iowa. That was the deadline to register for that. But more to the point is get ready. Whether it's the presidential election or anything down ballot, it is going to be a wild year. I mean, just think about the last few elections, how these things go between commercials and the coverage. And of course, yes, going to be lots of visitors here as, they gear up for the primary and then eventually the general election. So get ready for lots of visitors, lots of talk about politics and who's running. And I know it never ends, but this is the election year. So just prepare yourself for it to ramp back up. And President Joe Biden, of course, is running for re-election. We'll see who his opponent will be. Certainly seems like it'll be Donald Trump, but who knows? And Biden is going to go out on a tour, and his office has mentioned, the White House, of course, being his office. I guess I should just say that. The White House had put out some details about an upcoming tour, for lack of a better word, that he'll be going on. And, a lot of times you'll see during these events a president who's running for re-election touting their accomplishments, and I'm sure that will be part of his agenda on these visits. But it seems like the tone is really going to be pointing to some of the darker moments in history as he tries to relate it to who is likely to be his opponent, Donald Trump. One of those visits will be here in Charleston on Monday. So yes, this coming Monday, which is the 8th, President Joe Biden will be making a stop at Mother Emanuel Church. So be prepared for that as well, as far as traffic in that area around the airport, as well as I'm sure they'll be flying in on Air Force One. And if you've ever been here when a presidential or a president, or in Biden's case, when he was vice president, he would come and visit as well. You know how it can get a little hectic, or at least shut down some roads for a little bit. So be prepared for that. First, the president will be going to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, or at least near there, which is where George Washington and the Continental Army spent a pretty bad winter nearly 250 years ago. Then, during this speech, he's expected to, talk about former President Trump. And of course, with Saturday being the 6th, he's going to be talking about the riot that took place at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th a few years back. And he's going to try to relate it, of course, to President Trump and how he, had a hand in that, and also his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. So if you follow politics or what have you, be prepared for that. If you see that on the news, that's likely what that discussion is going to be like. And then a couple days later, yes, he'll be here visiting Mother Emanuel, where, of course, 9 people were shot and killed in a racist attack back in June of 2015. And again, he's visiting these places of dark moments in bad history over, in our country's distant past as well as recent past, as the case of Mother Emanuel just being, a handful of years ago. And he's trying to relate this, like I said, to former President Trump. And I mean, this is what I hate to say it, but that's probably going to be the biggest campaign message, is just that negative, look at this guy, look what he did previously. So you're going to hear a lot of talk of that, as if we haven't heard enough talk about that over the last handful of years. But Biden's re-election campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, said in a conference call with reporters this week that they are running a campaign like the fate of our democracy depends on it, because it does. And again, that is a quote attributed to her. So they're going to kind of highlight, how they believe Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy, and the types of things he has done previously or may do if he's reelected. So, yeah, we're not going positive, at least in the early going. Not that we would expect anything less from politics, whether here locally or nationally. It's not a whole lot of fun things to talk about. I mean, there could be, you want to tout how well certain policies are done or what's been passed, but it seems they're going all in on that message of this guy is dangerous and shouldn't be elected. And that's the most important thing about this election. So that's the word from the White House when they spoke to reporters this week. We'll see, what exactly as the year goes on. Maybe this is just because of the anniversary of January 6th, but regardless of all that, and me just pontificating about stuff I don't know what's going to happen about, what I can tell you is, yes, Monday, the president will be at Mother Emanuel. There hasn't been really any strong details as far as time, or if it's open to the public in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, of course, with this coming out on Friday, I won't have an update on the pod about that stuff. But if details are released, be sure to check holycitycenter.com or any associated social media channels for HCS, and you can see, if there is a chance, if there's any public events or anything like that. Related to this, our mayor-elect, William Cogswell, he'll actually be inaugurated on Monday, as well as some new city council members. So that's Inauguration Day here in Charleston. So that'll be going on. How that relates to the Biden story is that Mayor-elect Cogswell invited the president to attend the inauguration, saying, hey, while you're in town, come on over. We'll see if that actually happens or not. Is this just a chance to make some headlines and to say, hey, look at me, I'm being bipartisan by inviting a Democratic president, despite the fact I'm a Republican? Yeah, there's obviously a little bit of that. But again, I think this goes back to what I've talked about in this podcast, where I think Mayor-elect Cogswell was labeled as like an extremist because some Moms for Liberty folks had donated to his campaign, and he never had really come out and said anything about them, good or bad, which also some people are like, oh, that's not, he's not coming out against that group. But it led up to this belief that he was like maybe this like extremist MAGA Republican, and it certainly doesn't seem that way so far. We talked about how he had brought a Democrat and Mika Gadsden, who, whether you want to say Democrat, liberal, whatever it may be, onto his staff. And now this, where he's inviting the Democratic president to come to his inauguration, again, just shows that he doesn't have this, and if he does, he's not saying it out loud, any bad blood towards, his opposing party. It's kind of harkens back to older days when, politicians are always going to, especially the two parties, are always going to go against each other and they're going to be butting heads. But a more civil version of that, which I think a lot of people sometimes miss, that a little bit more civility than we used to have. So again, I think this is just, yes, I know it's silly. The president's here trying to drum up some attention ahead of his inauguration and all that. But I truly believe that this is just another attempt by him also to say, hey, I'm more moderate than some people would lead you to believe. And I'm going to work for everyone in the city. We'll see. As I've said, that's just me speculating based on what I've seen and heard and during the campaign. And now that he is the mayor-elect, who knows what will actually shake out after he's inaugurated. But I think this is just another signal that he's a lot more towards the moderate side of things, the center versus hard right. And again, just speculating. So to hold it against me if things change in one direction or the other. But that's what it certainly seems like. So that's how it ties into Monday. We'll see. I doubt the president will show up, but who knows? Regardless, the ceremony will be held, the inauguration ceremony we're talking about, on Monday at noon in front of City Hall. There will then be a reception at Washington Square Park, which is right nearby it. Both the ceremony and reception are open to the public, so feel free to attend. The inauguration ceremonies, they're guessing it's going to last about 45 minutes. And then the reception in Washington Square will run from about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So if you're interested, you're off from work, regardless if you voted for him or the new city council members, it's a unique experience to be able to see an inauguration, especially one involving someone who, it's not a re-election campaign. This is someone new. This is a new mayor. So it certainly is a historic day, regardless of where you are on party lines or what you feel about the mayor, etc. So another big thing going on Monday. With that, let's get into the crazier story that's happening elsewhere in the state. Still related to politics, the political director of the South Carolina Republican Party and her mother are facing assault charges after they were arrested by Conway police earlier this week. Stick with me. It's a somewhat confusing story because the only names in here are the director and her mother. So I'm going to be using a lot of terms like the witness, the victim, because their names are not included. So it can be a little tough to keep up with, but it is a bizarre story to say the least. So this was also surprising to me. Just there's nothing wrong with it, but was just surprised that the South Carolina Republican Party's political director is just 22 years old. You don't see that a lot. Someone that young in like a director role, even on the state level like that. But her name is Braley Estep. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, she's just 22 years old and is the political director of the Republican Party. Again, nothing wrong with that. Just was somewhat shocking to me and other people. You're just not used to seeing people that young in those roles. Now, her and her mother, Michelle Stalvey Estep, who is 53 years old, were charged with third-degree assault and battery by a mob, which sounds, jarring. But we'll get into the details exactly what that charge is. Now, this is all according to online booking records for the J. Reuben Long Detention Center. They both posted $5,000 bonds on Wednesday afternoon and were released from jail. So the charges come from this alleged fight that happened all the way back on December 23rd. So this took a little while to hit the news stations as well. Just kind of hit the news stations this week. So the alleged fight happened on December 23rd at the Stalvy's Watering Hole Bar located in the 1600 block of 4th Avenue out in Conway. A third woman, identified only as a suspect in the report, has not been charged. So, again, for whatever reason, there's a third person, no name. So what happened? Police were originally called to the area to look into a vandalism complaint and then talk to a witness and a victim who said they were drinking at the bar when the third woman's boyfriend began, quote, hovering over them, end quote. He also then started calling them vulgar names. The victim and the witness then left to go outside. They wanted to go to their vehicle just to get out of there. When they did that, another person remained to pay off their bar tab. However, it was taking a little bit longer than they anticipated. They were becoming cold, and they decided to go back inside while the bill was being paid. After the bill was paid, the report said there was some more bickering between the parties, and according to the report, Michelle Estep heard the commotion and then heard the victim say something negative about her daughter. So this is where it gets confusing. Whoever this guy who was hovering around we don't know who this is, but doesn't seem to have any ties to this family. And so the mother, this is the first time either of the people who were arrested come into this story. So apparently there was some arguing. She came over, and then for some reason, the person who ended up becoming the victim claims that they said something negative about her daughter. So then, as the victim and the witness were in their car and about to leave, so they're back outside now, the report said Braley, the younger one, began banging on one of their windows. Then at one point, all three suspects were at the car window, and when the door was open, they allegedly began to, quote, hit and assault the victim repeatedly, end quote. During the fight, the report said a third woman grabbed a cup from inside the vehicle and then hit the outside of the vehicle, which caused 3 large dents. The witness was then able to put the car in reverse and drove to another location to call emergency services. So very bizarre. So the whole charge of assault and battery by a mob is because there were multiple people. 3, again, don't know why the third person isn't named in this and wasn't charged with anything. But the South Carolina Republican Party political director and her mother were the other 2, and they all went out and together. Where once that car door opened, all 3 of them, apparently, allegedly, started hitting the victim. So that's why you see this by mob charge. You see that in the headline, you're like, oh my, what happened here? And don't get me wrong, this is bad. But when you hear mob, you're thinking like a huge crowd of people. Not to diminish this at all, because 3 people attacking one person, I'm sure was incredibly frightening for that person. So that's what's going on there. So far, the South Carolina Republican Party has not released any statement on this. Now, that may change by the time you hear this. This is the most up-to-date info I had when I was recording. According to their website, Braley graduated from the University of South Carolina in December of 2021. She has a political science degree. She also attended Conway High School. She served as an intern with the state's GOP party, something called their Victory Program, which was in Myrtle Beach, and has been involved in multiple statewide campaigns. Again, this is all according to their site. During the 2022 election cycle, she served as a regional field director in Georgia for the race between Governor Brian Kemp and Herschel Walker. So she obviously has done a lot in politics. And again, I know it's nothing wrong with being young. It was just shocking to see that age. And then more shocking is you're reading the charges and what exactly happened. And yes, if you're wondering, her family does operate some businesses in the area, including the Bait and Tackle that has her mom's maiden name on it. So very bizarre story. We'll see if more details come out, because it still seems like there's some important things that are missing. But just a wild story. Hopefully the victim, it doesn't seem like they sustained any injuries. And if they did, nothing substantial, at least, again, according to the reporting that we're seeing. So that's good news. And hopefully we'll get some more details and this whole thing will become a little clearer. But such a strange story, and something for you to look into this weekend if you haven't already. It is confusing and weird. And, but also at the same time, like, hey, this is South Carolina politics. It's a lot of weird, crazy things that happen with whether it's politicians themselves or people who work for campaigns or the two parties. I should never be surprised when it comes to the politics in the state. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Hope you enjoyed this first episode of 2024. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Go to holycitycenter.com if you're looking for some events, looking for something to do this weekend. I've got you covered. You can support this podcast by liking, reviewing, subscribing, all that good stuff. And you can also go to patreon.com/holycitycenter. It's another way you can help out. We'll have more to talk about on Monday. I'm not going to make any promises, but things should be back to normal now that the holidays are over. Before I go, big thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And also a huge thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show as well. I will talk to you again on Monday. Until then, good night and good luck.